My name is Leah Rowan. For as long as I can remember, my family has treated me like I was made of smoke. Always present, yet never really seen. My older brother, the golden child, walked through life draped in applause. Every achievement of his, no matter how small, was met with celebration. At best, silence. At worst, a cutting remark. Why can't you be more like him? Before we dive deeper, take a second to hit subscribe, tap the like button, and share this video with someone who loves powerful, emotional stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this journey goes next. The words carved deep. I swallowed them whole year after year, believing that if I worked harder, sacrificed more, one day they would finally see me. I put my own ambitions on hold, dedicating myself to holding our fractured family together, thinking maybe love could be earned through loyalty. When my brother announced his wedding, I thought my chance had finally come. They handed me the responsibility to make the day flawless. I poured my time, my savings, my very soul into the details. Every flower chosen, every meal planned, it all came from me. I believed that if I made his dream day perfect, they might finally look at me with pride. I was wrong. The night before the wedding, everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. The night before the wedding, the air around our dining table was heavy, like the silence before a storm. My brother leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone as if none of us mattered. His fiancée sat beside him, quiet, her fork moving food around her plate without taking a bite. I waited for someone, anyone, to acknowledge the months I'd spent pouring every ounce of myself into this day. Instead, my brother looked up and demanded more. A luxury band. Imported orchids. Vintage champagne. A photographer whose price tag alone made my stomach twist. I tried to steady my voice. I can't. The budget is gone. My savings are gone. It's already covered. The room turned on me. My mother's glass clinked hard against the table as her eyes narrowed. This is his day, Leah. Don't ruin it with excuses. My father, barely glancing up from his plate, muttered, "Stop being selfish." Their words pierced deeper than any knife. Selfish? I had drained myself dry for them, and still it wasn't enough. My brother smirked, murmuring to his fiancée, "See? I told you she'd cut corners." And then came the sentence that changed everything. My mother's voice was ice, sharp enough to split the air. "The greatest gift you could give your brother," she said, her gaze fixed on me like a blade, "is to vanish from this family forever." The room froze. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. My chest tightened, but I didn't argue. I had no strength left to beg for scraps of their love. I pushed back from the table, the legs of my chair scraping harshly against the floor. My purse hung from the backrest. I grabbed it, the keys inside clinking with a finality that rang in my ears. "Fine," I whispered, my voice steady though my insides trembled. As I walked toward the door, my brother smirked, victorious. My father returned to his plate as though nothing had happened. My mother called after me, "Don't make a scene, Leah." But I was done being silent. I slammed the door behind me, the sound reverberating through my bones like the end of a chapter. Outside, the night air was cold against my skin, but for the first time, I felt a strange fire in my chest. I had been erased from their world, yet something inside me had just awakened. I sat in my car outside the house, the steering wheel gripped tight in my hands. Their words replayed over and over. "Vanish from this family forever." It wasn't the first time they'd dismissed me, but this time was different. This time they meant it. I opened my phone, the wedding expenses glaring back at me in black and white. $10,000. Every cent of my savings was tangled up in deposits for their perfect day. Flowers, catering, the band. Money I'd scraped together from years of hustling, gone in an instant. The more I stared at those numbers, the clearer it became. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they would not have my silence, my money, and my obedience all at once. By morning I was on the phone. One by one I cancelled every contract. The caterer hesitated, muttering about penalties, but I didn't care. The florist too. No roses, no centerpieces. The band had already cashed my check, but I fought for a chargeback. By noon nearly all my money had returned. The wedding was stripped bare. No flowers. No music. No food. They had demanded my absence. Now I'd give them a wedding they would never forget. Chaos erupted at the venue before the vows could even be spoken. Guests arrived in pressed suits and glittering dresses only to find bare tables, empty aisles, and silence where music should have filled the air. Murmurs turned to whispers, whispers into outright questions. My brother's fiancée stood frozen in her gown, clutching her bouquetless hands, her face paling as relatives began to glance her way. My brother, red-faced and trembling, shouted at the staff, demanding answers they couldn't give. I didn't go. I didn't need to. The unraveling of their carefully built illusion played out without me. My phone buzzed endlessly with calls. First my mother, her voice shrill in the voicemail. "Leah, what have you done? You've ruined everything." Then my father, cold and deliberate. "You are a disgrace to this family." I didn't return either call. Their condemnation was nothing new. I'd lived under it my entire life. But this time it didn't break me. Later my brother took his rage online. On a local community forum he branded me as jealous, spiteful, unhinged. His words spread like wildfire. Neighbors I'd known since childhood chimed in, calling me selfish, calling me cruel. For once I didn't fight back. I sat alone in my apartment, the glow of my laptop illuminating post after post, tearing my name apart. She destroyed her brother's wedding out of spite. She's always been unstable. The lies multiplied, twisting into a version of me I barely recognized. My mother even joined the chorus, leaving her own reply beneath my brother's accusations. "She's always been trouble. We should have known." My father didn't post, but his silence was its own verdict. My stomach churned. For years I had saved their store, poured my energy into their lives, given them everything they demanded, and still they found a way to paint me as the villain. I could have exposed them. I could have told everyone about the thousands of dollars I'd sacrificed, the nights spent planning every detail, the endless hours holding their world together. But what would it matter? They'd never admit the truth. Instead I opened a new tab. Asheville, North Carolina. A mountain town I'd visited once long ago where the air felt cleaner, freer. As I scrolled through rental listings, something inside me shifted. If my family wanted me erased, then I would disappear, but on my own terms. That night I booked a one-way bus ticket with hands that didn't quite feel like mine, an act both small and seismic. I packed 2 suitcases, clothes, my laptop, a handful of notebooks with half-finished campaigns and ideas, a couple of favorite novels. I left the framed photos and the ghosts on the mantel behind. Nathan, my oldest friend, came by before dawn, eyes heavy but steady. He had the blunt, gentle way of someone who refuses to let you sink without a hand. He showed me my brother's post on his phone, the venom wrapped in righteous anger. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded because crying would have made it real. "I'm done with them," I told him, and the words tasted like both grief and freedom. He didn't argue. He helped me tape a few boxes, handed me a thermos for the road, and said, "You're stronger than they ever saw." On the bus, the landscape shifted from familiar streets to rolling hills I'd only ever admired through a windshield. Each mile was a small severing of blame, expectation, and the quiet, corrosive hope that they might change. The ride hummed around me, people absorbed in their own worlds. I let myself imagine a place where my value wasn't measured by their approval. When the city's skyline melted into blue ridges, I felt something uncoil in my chest. It didn't wipe away the hurt, but it taught me that a life could begin anywhere I chose. The apartment was nothing glamorous, just a narrow one-bedroom tucked above a hardware store downtown. But when I turned the key and stepped inside, I felt lighter than I had in years. Bare walls, scratched wooden floors, a single window that framed the distant rise of the Blue Ridge peaks. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That first night, I sat cross-legged on the floor with takeout noodles balanced on my lap, the scent of sesame and garlic filling the emptiness. For once, there was no one to please, no expectations hovering like a storm. Just silence, and the slow realization that I could shape my days however I wanted. Meanwhile, news trickled in from the life I'd left behind. Nathan texted updates in short, blunt bursts. Suppliers pulling out. Customers gone. The stores closing. My brother, who had been handed everything I'd built, was fumbling so badly that the business collapsed within weeks. My parents tried to salvage it, but the cracks I had once patched split open, wide and merciless. I didn't reply to Nathan's messages. Their ruin wasn't mine to fix anymore. Instead, I focused on Asheville, on the clean air and the chance to build a life where I wasn't a shadow. I began again in small steps. A flyer in the window of a coffee shop led to my first local client, a bookstore owner desperate to bring in foot traffic. I spent nights designing ads, crafting slogans, and testing social media posts. The results came quickly. Readers crowded into his shop, and his gratitude was genuine, untainted by comparison. From there, word spread. A brewery, a boutique, a hiking gear shop. All small businesses that needed the kind of work I knew how to do. Each project felt like stacking bricks on a new foundation, one that no one could take from me. My income was modest, just enough for groceries and rent, but the sense of control was intoxicating. One morning, drawn by the scent of warm bread, I wandered into a bakery on a corner I hadn't explored yet. The woman behind the counter wore an apron dusted with flour, her laugh filling the room before she even spoke. "You look new here," she said, sliding a scone across the counter. Her name was Clara. She asked nothing of me, only told stories of starting her bakery after a brutal divorce, how she'd built it from scratch. "Takes guts to start over," she said, eyes kind. For the first time in years I believed her. Clara became a quiet anchor in my new world. Each morning I'd stop by her bakery, the air heavy with sugar and cinnamon, the clatter of trays echoing in the background. She always had a smile waiting, and often a free pastry she claimed was a baker's mistake. But I knew better. Over steaming mugs of coffee, she introduced me to other shop owners, weaving me into Asheville's small business network as though I'd always belonged. Within weeks I landed 2 more clients, a cafe needing a rebrand and a gallery owner desperate to draw in weekend crowds. Her kindness wasn't transactional. She never asked for discounts on my work, never diminished what I offered. Instead, she listened. When I spoke about leaving behind my family, her eyes softened, but she didn't press. She simply said, "Sometimes you have to choose yourself even if it hurts." At night, back in my apartment, I felt the shift. The silence no longer pressed down on me, it wrapped me in peace. My inbox filled with client inquiries, my savings began to grow again, and slowly the constant ache in my chest began to ease. But then one morning an envelope arrived, shaky handwriting scrawled across the front. My mother's name. The letter trembled in my hands before I even opened it. My mother's handwriting, once so precise, was jagged and uneven, as if scrawled in a rush. I unfolded the paper and read her plea. She claimed she was sick, seriously ill, and begged me to return. Her words were soaked in guilt, painting me as the only one who could hold the family together again. For a moment my resolve wavered. I saw flashes of her face, the woman who had once tucked me into bed, who used to hum while cooking Sunday dinners. What if it was true? What if she needed me? I carried the letter into Clara's bakery, unable to hide the weight of it. She wiped her flour-dusted hands and read the page. Her brow furrowed, her lips pressed thin. "This smells like manipulation," she said flatly. "People don't change overnight." Later I called Nathan. His voice was steady, no hesitation. "She's trying to pull you back, Leah. Don't let her." The ache in my chest spread, but beneath it was something stronger. For once I had people who saw through the lies, who wanted me free, not bound. I picked up a pen and wrote my reply, short, final. "I wish you well, but I'm not coming back." Dropping that letter into the mailbox felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. It wasn't just ink on paper. It was the final thread snapping. I walked away with my chest tight but my steps firm. I blocked their numbers. I silenced the echo of their voices. It wasn't easy. Memories tugged at me, moments when I still longed for a mother's praise, a father's steady hand on my shoulder. But wanting and having were different things. I had wanted their love my whole life, and it had never been given freely. Clara noticed the shadow in my eyes that week. She poured me coffee, her voice warm but unyielding. "You're choosing yourself," she said, sliding the mug closer. "That's the bravest choice of all." Nathan echoed her when he called one evening. "You're free now. Don't look back." His words, simple and sure, steadied me like an anchor in rough seas. And so I began to live again. I joined a local hiking group, scaling trails where the world stretched wide and wild. I picked up my old paints, filling pages with watercolor ridges and skies. My apartment slowly transformed. A rug, plants in the window, shelves of books I finally had time to read. Piece by piece, a life of my own was taking shape. As months passed, Asheville no longer felt like a stopover. It became home. My small marketing business grew roots, steady and strong. I secured a contract with the Regional Tourism Board, a 6-month campaign worth more than anything I'd ever earned before. The work demanded late nights and relentless detail, but every moment carried proof that I was building something real. Clara's Bakery became my second office. I'd sit at a corner table with my laptop open, the hum of conversation around me, the scent of fresh bread weaving comfort into the air. She'd bring me a muffin with a wink, fuel for the grind. And her belief in me, so uncomplicated and unwavering, reminded me daily that I was more than what my family once claimed. Nathan stayed present even from miles away. His calls always carried warmth, sometimes punctuated with laughter, sometimes with silence that said more than words. He'd send photos of woodworking projects, tables, shelves, tiny boxes carved with care. "Eden isn't the same without you," he told me once. "But you're thriving out there." For the first time I believed him. My worth wasn't tied to saving anyone else. It was here in the life I was shaping with my own hands. Then came another reminder of the past I'd left behind. A cousin reached out with whispered updates. My parents had sold the family home. Their savings were gone, drained trying to keep the store alive after I walked away. They now lived in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of town, their once proud names spoken in hushed tones by neighbors who no longer offered smiles. My brother had fared no better. The charm that once carried him through life dissolved when responsibility landed in his lap. He stumbled through jobs, his arrogance a poor mask for failure. The fiancée who had once clung to his arm quietly drifted away, their engagement unraveling under the weight of everything he couldn't hold together. I listened to these updates with a strange detachment. For years I would have run back at the first sign of their suffering. I would have sacrificed again, hoping it would finally earn me a sliver of their pride. But now I simply nodded and went back to my work. Their downfall wasn't mine to shoulder. I had already given them more than enough. Asheville was my world now, and in it I was no longer invisible. Life in Asheville began to bloom in ways I hadn't expected. My client list grew. 5 steady contracts with a brewery, a bookstore, an art gallery, a cafe, and the hiking gear shop that had first taken a chance on me. Each project carried its own rhythm, designing logos, shaping stories, bringing businesses to life. The money wasn't lavish, but it was steady, $3,000 a month, enough to cover rent, groceries, and the occasional indulgence like a concert ticket or a new pair of boots for the trails. More than that, each paycheck was proof. I could stand on my own. Evenings often found me at Clara's Bakery, the smell of cinnamon and sugar wrapping around me like comfort. She'd slide a steaming mug of tea across the counter after closing. "You're building something beautiful," she'd say, her voice firm with conviction. And for once I didn't argue. Nathan's calls remained a lifeline. He'd laugh, sharing pieces of his world back home, then grow quiet. "They never deserved you," he said once. His certainty filled the spaces where my doubt used to live. Slowly I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, I had been enough all along. One crisp autumn morning, a letter slipped under my apartment door, shaky handwriting that stopped my breath. My mother again. She wrote that she'd been diagnosed with a grave illness. Her words dripped with desperation. "Come home. We need you. Your father and brother can't do this without you." The plea was heavy with guilt, a familiar chain tugging at the old wound. I sat staring at the page, torn between anger and sorrow. What if she was truly sick? What if I turned my back and regretted it forever? I carried the letter to Clara's Bakery. She read it silently, her jaw tightening. "Leah," she said at last, tossing it onto the counter, "this reeks of manipulation. People don't change just because they've lost everything." Later I called Nathan. He didn't hesitate. "She's trying to drag you back into the same cycle. Don't fall for it." Their voices steadied me. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope with my reply. Short, sharp, final. "I wish you well, but I won't return." Dropping it in the mailbox, I felt a weight lift, though grief twisted in my chest. Choosing myself had never hurt so much, or felt so right. Cutting them off didn't feel like victory. It felt like mourning, like burying a family I had never truly had. Some nights I lay awake, aching for the version of them I'd always hoped would exist. A mother who saw me, a father who defended me, a brother who treated me as more than a shadow. But wanting illusions only chained me to pain. Clara noticed the heaviness in my eyes and one morning, set down my coffee with a smile that carried no judgment. "You're choosing yourself," she said softly. "That's the hardest, bravest thing anyone can do." Nathan echoed her sentiment in his next call. His voice was steady, grounding. "You're free now, Leah. Don't look back." so I leaned into my new life. I joined a hiking group that explored the wild trails beyond the city. Standing atop ridges where the horizon stretched endless, I felt my chest open, my lungs fill with something more than air, possibility. I painted again, watercolors blooming across paper in blues and greens, capturing mountains that seemed eternal. My apartment filled with life. Plants on the windowsill, shelves of books I finally had time to read. Slowly the ache dulled, replaced by something I'd never known before. Peace. The months slipped by and Asheville became more than a refuge. It became the soil where I grew. My marketing work flourished. The regional tourism board hired me for a campaign that doubled my income. Long nights drafting slogans, designing visuals, and pitching strategies no longer drained me. They fueled me. Each finished project felt like another brick in the foundation of the life I was finally claiming as my own. Clara's Bakery remained my sanctuary. Some evenings after the shop closed, we'd sit at a small wooden table with mugs of tea, the scent of cinnamon rolls still hanging in the air. "You're different now," she told me once, her eyes kind but sharp. And she was right. I hadn't thought about the family I'd left in weeks. The constant ache, the hunger for their approval, was fading into silence. Even the community began to weave me into its fabric. Clients stopped by to thank me, strangers smiled on the sidewalks, and laughter filled rooms I once entered quietly. One night, Clara invited a group of regulars to stay after hours. We traded stories over coffee and pastries, laughter spilling out into the quiet street. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a shadow. I felt seen. News from my old town still found its way to me, though I no longer sought it out. My cousin's emails painted the picture in muted tones. My parents, forced to sell their home, now squeezed into a dim apartment where silence replaced pride. Neighbors avoided them, whispers of failure trailing in their wake. My brother had tumbled further still. The law career he once flaunted crumbled after he botched too many cases. With no fiancé, no reputation, he ended up stocking shelves at a hardware store. His arrogance hadn't vanished. It simply looked ridiculous now, like a mask slipping on a broken stage. Their empire of denial had collapsed. But I felt no triumph, only distance. The girl who once would have rushed home to rescue them was gone. In her place stood someone different. Someone who no longer needed their recognition to feel whole. In Asheville, I was building something honest. Clients trusted me. Friends welcomed me. My days hummed with work, laughter, and the quiet joy of evenings spent painting or walking under the canopy of mountain stars. Their downfall was theirs to carry. My life finally was mine. Winter settled gently over Asheville, the mountains draped in white, streets glowing with warm lamplight. My apartment, once bare, now felt like home. Plants lined the windowsill, watercolor landscapes leaned against the walls, and the hum of a heater filled the quiet with comfort. One evening, after finishing a campaign that boosted a local shop's sales, I wandered into Clara's Bakery. The place smelled of ginger and sugar, laughter spilling from a few tables of regulars. Clara waved me over, sliding a mug of tea across the counter. "Look at you," she said, her eyes glinting. "You've built yourself a whole new world." I smiled, the truth of her words sinking deep. I wasn't the shadow in someone else's story anymore. I was the writer of my own. Occasionally, I thought of the family I'd left behind, their cold stares, their cutting words, the endless hunger for a love they'd never give. But the thoughts no longer chained me. They were ghosts, fading with each passing day. Here in this mountain town, I had found something far stronger than their approval. I had found belonging. And for the first time in my life, I was enough.